I've heard that life is what you make it. I say, make room to grow. I'm your host, LaWanda Dockery, and this is the Make Room to Grow podcast. It all started with a dream about growing food, and who would ever imagine that growing food would lead to me learning about personal growth and development? Well, it did, and I want to bring you along for this beautiful ride. Thank you so much for joining me. Hello, Grow Nation. I missed you guys. I hope this finds you well and getting ready to get your hands dirty in the garden this weekend. I am so excited this week because I have my very first co-host, drum roll, none other than my husband, my partner in crime out there in the garden. So we're going to pick his brain today and see what he has to say. So if you're new to Make Room to Grow, you will know that this is my second season growing, that I started growing last summer, middle of July. I had a dream about growing vegetables out on my back porch. It was a God-given dream, and I followed it out. And then we started our first iteration of our vegetable garden on our back porch. Now this year, I was pleasantly surprised because I had a whole lot of help out there, and we expanded to a raised bed out in our yard. All right, so Doc, I want you to tell me how you got involved in gardening with me.
First off, hey, Grow Nation. It's finally great to be on the episode with my wife. You asked me the question, how I get into gardening, or why did I start gardening? Mainly because I wanted to spend more time with you. You had once told me about, it's funny that you mentioned, your dream. You had mentioned in your dream one time about galvanized pots. Is that what they're called? I didn't know what a galvanized anything was, so I was intrigued by even the mention of a galvanized pot. I've heard them in movies, I've heard them, different places, but never paid attention to them. And then when you mentioned it in your dream, I had to take a look at it.
Okay, so if you didn't listen to the first episode, the galvanized pots, when I was dreaming about growing food on the back porch, I saw these huge old school wash tubs, and all I knew to say that they were galvanized pots. So I told him about the dream when I woke up. So that's what he is referring to. But I was surprised this year when he actually got involved. He did it on his own volition. I did not have to twist his arm, and it's been a ball. Out the gate though, what has been the most surprising thing that you've learned in the garden this year, Doc?
Well, I wouldn't say the most surprising things, but what surprised me is, what was it, that pea plant or pea vegetable pot? What do you call that thing? The string beans. Well, I keep calling the other thing the string beans. I had completely turned my back on them for once during the season. And next thing I know, they sprouted back up. I'm actually about to eat some of them right now. I'm about to put them in the toaster oven. So yeah. Also, another thing that surprised me was the process of the plant. Like how the plant completely builds a house, if you will. Like if you look at different plants, like say your okra or your beans, what I was just talking about, or just recently I was just outside looking at the eggplant. It completely builds a house, if you will, before it starts to produce fruit. That's another thing that surprised me as well.
All right, before I get into my surprises this year, I want you to break down a little bit more for me. What do you mean by building a house? The plants build a house before they produce fruit.
Take your root, for example. Your root can be like your basement, if you will. As it starts to grow up, as it busts through the shell and starts to grow up, different leaves start to form out. The leaves kind of serve as a protection. Every plant has different leaves. I love the okra plant because the okra plant is so sexy, if you will. It got a certain color to it, a certain pattern to the leaf. It's just very distinguished. You can't mix it up with any other plant. Most all plants are like that. You can't, each house looks different. Like the eggplant I was just looking at, like I was just talking about, it's got this purple color. It's got these pretty purple flowers. Like I said, the leaves kind of show off as a roof. And then your stems kind of like rooms of the house. And then when your flowers come, your flowers are almost like the windows. And then the flowers kind of produce this whatever fruit that it is.
My husband is the king of analogies, y'all. Everything surprised me this year in the garden. We produced so much. I think we tallied up over 30 different plants that we've grown this year. So that was surprising. Being successful in the raised bed, all the cucumbers, the berries, okra, all of those things were surprising to me because for the first time, I was growing these things that I didn't think I could grow. I know we're running long on time, but I do just want to hear from you. What will you definitely have year after year in your garden from now on, Doc?
Year after year, I would say I'm always been a big cucumber guy. My mother, always used to come in the room with the cucumber sliced up, a little salt and pepper. This year I was eating them straight from the garden. I wasn't even putting no salt and pepper on them. I wasn't even peeling them. I was just eating them right from the jar. I clean them, wash them off, have you scrape a little bit and just eat them. So I definitely gonna have my cucumbers. Okra, this is the first time I ever seen an okra plant, let alone taste the okra plant. I've acquired a taste for it. I'm starting to like it. So that'll definitely be in there. I want to know how these sweet potatoes going to turn out that we got in there. If those turn out right, I'm going to probably try those again. I'm going to try some things in the new season. I can't wait to start a new season to try some things that we didn't grow in this season. So cucumbers, okra, those are my two favorites. I haven't found a third one yet. So we'll see.
You know how I ask a million questions, babe. What is the benefit of us gardening together? What do you feel is the benefit to our marriage with us both being out in the garden?
Well, one benefit it is giving us a new language, like a new cadence. Like we can talk, make room to grow talk or vegetable talk. And I know exactly what you're talking about. So it's giving us a new lingo, which is cool. It almost like makes our marriage bilingual because we could talk about regular stuff and then we could talk about gardening stuff. Like I know about transplant shock. I mean, I ain't know nothing about that last season or the season before this. And how does that speak to our lives even right now? Like the stuff that we go through, like taking you out of an environment and put you in a complete new environment. Plants go through that too. When you take it out of its first container or the container you started to grow with it and you put it into another, like say the raised bed that I put it in, what's to say that it won't go through a certain shock, that it won't develop or won't survive? Speaks volumes to our life. That's another thing that surprised me about gardening and about how relative plants and vegetables grow and their process is just like ours.
Well, I am having so much fun. I think I want to have a part 2. Will you come back for a part 2, Doc? All right. Well, I have his thumbs up on that. He'll be back. We'll do a part 2. Until next time, I want you to be intentional about those areas in your life where you are going to make room to grow.